You hear the goats are left. The humans are staying. Welcome, 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 everyone. Welcome, humans. Welcome, goats. Good afternoon and welcome to Compassion Consortium's Sunday service. I'm Reverend Sarah Bowen, and I'm joined today by co-founders Victoria Moran, Reverend William Melton, and Reverend Erica Allison. And as always, Phil is busy navigating us through the interesting environment that is Zoomland. We meet for Sunday service the fourth Sunday of every month, and we hope to see you often. If you are new to us, welcome. We are an interfaith, interspiritual, and interspecies community. Interfaith means that we welcome people of any spiritual or religious tradition, philosophy, path, system of meaning making, and we feature these within our programming. Today, we're going to explore theosophy with Nathaniel Altman. Interspiritual means that we believe underneath all of the world's religions and spiritual philosophies, there lies a commitment to three common values: peace, compassionate service, and love for all creation. And finally, our community is interspecies, which means we desire to have a truly inclusive spiritual community that goes beyond human superiority and exclusivism to consider the lives of and the potential needs of all the many species that we share the planet with. Today, I'm speaking to you having just returned from Chelem, Mexico, the land cherished by the Yucateco, as well as the flamingo and the blue-crowned motmot, the white-nosed coati mundi, and the Central American tapir. Those of you who are interested in history or herstory may recall that this land is also home to the Chicxulub crater. Yes, the Yucatan Peninsula is ground zero for a 6.2-mile-wide asteroid that many scientists suggest is responsible for causing the mass extinction of the dinosaurs. In fact, they believe that 75% of plant and animal species on Earth became extinct, including all the non-avian dinosaurs. So standing there, I kept thinking about that snarky Noah's Ark cartoon, which features a couple of dinosaurs who are staring out at an already departed ark. And one of them remarks to the other, "Oh crap, was that today?" Yet massive extinction isn't something we should chuckle about, really, is it? About 1 million animal and plant species are currently threatened with extinction. Last month, I shared a little with you about the correlation between the loss of plant and animal diversity with the loss of indigenous languages. And I talked about how preserving biocultural diversity is important for both. I shared that when languages are lost, so is crucial traditional ecological knowledge. I want to expand on that, considering other kinds of diversity today beyond languages. Since normally this Sunday, I'd be at New York City's Pride Parade. Those of you who were here last year in June may remember my Animal Pride Parade description, which was inspired by Joan Roughgarden's awesome book, Evolution's Rainbow: Diversity, Gender, and Sexuality in Nature and People. And I introduced you to gay penguins and intersex kangaroo rats, bears, hyenas, over 500 types of fish who routinely change sex during their lifetime, and even a flexostylus Chinese ginger who crisscrosses sex multiple times during a single day. And this year, with questions of access to contraception and women's issues on many of our minds, I'm taking a slightly different but related tack. A lot of animal advocates point to the issues facing female dairy cows as a reason for dropping dairy from their diet. And I'm included in that group. When I learned how female cows got impregnated, and that it wasn't from boy cows, as I was told as a kid, and I learned that their babies were taken from them over and over to keep milk flowing, I was dumbfounded. And I realized that as a woman, that wouldn't do for me. It didn't match my ethics. And after that, I got really intrigued by all sorts of intersections of women's issues across multiple species. So on the plane home from Mexico, I spent a few hours this week with my nose buried in Lucy Cook's new book, Bitch, A Revolutionary Guide to Sex, Evolution, and the Female Animal. In it, Cook shares her findings from a global adventure to meet the animals and scientists that are helping rewrite an outdated patriarchal view of evolution. Those who are exposing biases in scientific language and speaking up about how female animals of many, many species have been misrepresented by science. So let's look at one. Phil, could you bring up the slide, please? Okay, thank you. Meet a whiptail lizard, who I became acquainted with last month in Santa Fe. I love this photo because even without any zoological degrees, I can help you figure out what biological sex this lizard is. She's a she, and I can tell you this without any doubt and with 100% certainty, because all whiptail lizards are female. It's a female-only species. Now, of course, I can't tell you what gender this little one identifies as because, well, I don't speak whiptail. And the question also might be a little moot because it's hard to know how other species consider their sex or their gender. But let's do a little thought experiment here, which I think might be interesting. If this whiptail lizard was walking 2 by 2 on Noah's Ark, well, there would be 2 females. And after Noah's Ark landed, each of them would still be able to create little lizard offspring after the flood by themselves, because female whiptails don't need a male. Instead, bumping and grinding with each other stimulates them to lay eggs. Bumping and grinding are my human words. But their playfulness with each other encourages them to lay eggs and to reproduce by themselves. And newsflash, they aren't the only female species to do this. Okay, we can get rid of the slide now. Thank you, Phil. I bring this up because this type of diversity, the type that Cook and Rough Garden and others are speaking to, is critical, not only interesting. I think it's important for us in our role as animal advocates and activists, because it's not enough just to commit to living a compassionate, nonviolent lifestyle in some sort of moral abstraction. If we really care about others, and we really care about other species and their lives, we need to commit to knowing about them, understanding the fascinating details of their lives, understanding the challenges they face, and seeing the intersections with the challenges that we face, so that we can touch a place where we feel like we know a little more about them. For example, knowing more about whiptail lizard relationships might help us explain to others even better what the problems are with the exotic pet trade. I think it's also really critical for us to know more about the animals that we advocate for because of their intersections with the issues that humans have. Let me explain one more reason why. Nature abounds with alternative family structures. And that's pretty important to us with what we're going on right now. There are same-sex couples for humans and for other than humans. There are polyamorous thruples, say that a couple times fast, polyamorous thruples, and other family constellations that show up in animal species that are fascinating. And they also show up in the human species, which is also fascinating. Learning that these things are natural and normal and show up in other creatures may help us better understand the diversity within humans as well. And so as Pride Month comes to a wrap, I urge us all to defy rigid binary stereotypes of male and female in the animal kingdom and the human kingdom. I hope we'll also ponder the implications of children's stories that suggest Noah's Ark included one male and one female of each species. And I hope that many of you will be curious enough to pick up and read either one of these books by Lucy Cook or Joan Roughgarden to learn more about the incredible spectrum of gender and sex and sexual diversity that exists among all species in the world, so that we don't put our human biases onto them. All right, that's it for me today. Happy Pride, as those of us who live with cats might say. And over to you, William.
So we always start our spiritual service with a reading of our Tenets of Agreement, which this is really the foundation for the Compassion Consortium. It's what we believe. These are the principles upon which we are founded. And these are the principles that all of our members commit to. And so, as I said, we start with a reading of it. And today our reader is Greg Lawson. Greg is a retired National Parks Service ranger. He's interested in the effects of a meat diet on wildlife and the environment. He is a Main Street Vegan Academy certified master coach, vice president of the Vegetarian Society of El Paso, and co-host of the long-running NPR radio show, Animal Concerns of Texas. So, over to you, Phil and Greg.
1. We acknowledge a divine force at the heart of the universe and in all living beings. We may refer to this force as God, but it's known by many names and appears in different forms or as formless. 2. We recognize the common moral principles inherent within all wisdom traditions. 3. We affirm that compassion, reverence for life, and nonviolence are fundamental to religious faith and moral philosophy, and are to be extended to all sentient beings. 4. We stand by the principles of inclusion, diversity, and equality, and hold these as essential in our human relations. 5. We hold that non-human animals are imbued with the same essence of life and love as are human animals, and that there is moral parity between us. 6. We avow that humans do not own the earth, its resources, or its inhabitants, but instead must be involved in their protection and care. 7. We endeavor to eat and live in a kind and sustainable manner, moving away from animal foods and animal-derived clothing, as well as any activities that cause harm to our fellow beings, human or otherwise. 8. We aim to provide spiritual comfort, fellowship, and food for thought to those practicing or exploring a vegan lifestyle. 9. We offer guidance and peer support for all those seeking a more compassionate and spiritual life. 10. We commit to sharing these principles freely, with humility and respect, in support of non-human animals and the earth.
All right, well, thank you very much, Greg, for reading those for us. And I believe that it is now time to move on to our Song of Compassion. We have a Song of Compassion every month. And this month, our Song of Compassion is We Shall Be Known, composed by Moose, who are folk soul revival composers and artists. And this particular version is performed by the Thrive Choir out of Oakland, California. This song was suggested by Kate Lawrence, author of The Practical Peacemaker, How Simple Living Makes Peace Possible. And she is a member of our community. And the video was prepared by our very own Reverend Sarah Bowen. So, Phil, can you play this for us now?
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love.
Beautiful, thank you. And if we are known by the company we keep, I'm very happy to be known by being in company with all of you. So thank you all for being here today. So we're now leading into our interspecies spiritual practice. And I'm very excited to share that today's practice is coming to us from our guests later today. Karano and Kimmy have recorded the most amazing video for us. I call it, this is not what they call it, but I call it Just Be with the Bees. So we're going to check out, we're going to do a little meditation with the pollinators. And I just want to say up front, as Phil's bringing up the video, one of the things I love about this experience we're about to have is how immersive, based on the angle that they used on the video, the immersiveness of this. It really feels like we are there at Sweet Dig's farm on their land, and you'll get to learn more about that later in today's service when we introduce them. But for now, I would just like you to get the visceral experience of their farmland and the land that they're currently stewarding. It's kind of meditation, but it's really meant to be just kind of an immersive take it in through your senses, sort of an experience. We're really just going to be present, right? Think about one of Thich Nhat Hanh, the Vietnamese Buddhist monk. One of his great teachings is on this word interbeing. And it has so much in common with what we are all about here with interfaith and interspecies and interspiritual. So if we add interbeing, this is where we inter-are with all of these other beings. So as you're watching this video and you're being with the pollinators, you can interbe with them. You can see how we are one. You can see how we are one with the nature that we're going to be immersed in as this video comes up. And so just bringing that intention as we drop into this meditation to focus on the interbeing of all of us, how we're all connected, the animals, the human animals, the plants, the earth. So Carano and Kimmy, they run the Sweet Digs farm, which is a 2.5 acre veganic farm. And it's right outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. So we've got some Canadian farmers amongst us. And I'm really excited for you to see it. I myself would love to get out there someday and get to feel that and what they're doing. We'll hear more about their story later, but they're really doing some amazing farming practices that are not necessarily traditional when it comes to how farmers farm their land. So they're educators in their sector, in their industry, and it'll be exciting to hear more about that later. So I'll just invite you now to drop in, feel your body, feel the contact you have with whatever surface you're on. If you're sitting in a chair, if you're standing, feeling your feet on the ground. Just begin to feel your breath. If you're comfortable leaving your eyes open, I think you'll enjoy the experience of being immersed in the Sweet Digs farm. So I'd encourage you to maybe just soften your gaze a bit so that we can immerse into this video. And just beginning to take some deep breaths into your lungs as we get up close and personal with these amazing beings. Becoming aware of the sounds that you can take in. Of the visuals, these plants and all the beings who make this place their home. So what you imagine it might smell like if you were there right now. And to how you feel when you are immersed in this experience in this way. How you feel when you bring the intention of interbeing to this experience. See if you can just bring your awareness right here to this moment, to this scene. Letting go of any worries, any stress, any tension, any conflicts. And just being right here. With these buds, with these bees, with the secret hummingbird in the distance. In the sunshine that's above the scene. And you're all muted, so I can ask you to do this if you feel comfortable, just taking a nice deep inhale. And then on the exhale, just really letting out a nice sigh. Maybe one or two more of those if that feels good to you. So now whatever you need to do to gently begin to come back to our space, extract yourself from this beautiful nature scene, say goodbye to the pollinators, the plants, the sun, the sky, and the sunshine. Just bring your awareness back to our space here together, to our gathering here at the Compassion Consortium. So when you're ready, you can bring that video to a close. And you're just invited now to bring this feeling of peace and presence with you into our featured speaker of today. So I turn it over to Victoria.
Hi, everybody. It's always a pleasure to introduce our speaker every month, our interviewee. But today it's a special pleasure for me because I have known Nathaniel Altman for 52 years. We met when we were both working at the Theosophical Society in America. And at that time, when there was an able-bodied young man on staff, they put him on the grounds crew. So that was what Nathaniel was doing. And I was working in the library. So at night, Nathaniel would be up in his room, way up on the top floor. They put the young man up there too, and creating his book, which turned out to be Eating for Life, the first book, as far as I know, on vegetarianism to be published in the US in the 20th century. So he would bring his chapter down to me in the library where I had a fancy state-of-the-art electric typewriter, and I would retype the chapter and make it pretty. And I was thinking, gosh, I wonder if I could ever write a book. Well, fast forward, I've done 13, and my mentor, Nathaniel, I believe is at 27 and counting. So welcome, my friend and teacher, Nathaniel Altman.
Hi, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, Victoria. Thank you for having me.
Well, it's wonderful. And you are still, after these many years, a Theosophist. So for those who don't know what that is, please give us a little tutorial on Theosophy.
Theosophy it's called the wisdom religion. And I have something I could read very short thing of a statement that was recently published. It said that the bond of students of Theosophy is not a profession or belief or common belief, but a search and aspiration for truth. They hold the truth should be sought by study, by reflection, by purity of life, devotion to high ideals, and they regard truth as a prize to be striven for, not as a dogma. And one of the things that attracted me mostly to the Theosophical Society back in, I think, 1970, when I became a member, was the universality, the acceptance of people from all backgrounds, different religions, different races, equality of people of all genders. And recently, there's been an evolution in the Theosophical Society regarding ahimsa, which impressed me a lot. The Theosophical Society is made up of branches around the world. And I think there may be 40 or 50 something different national organizations. And the one in the United States, which Victoria and I, we worked at the headquarters of the Theosophical Society in America, recently has a platform promoting ahimsa as the essence of theosophy.
Wow.
And for me, this is kind of interesting because many years ago, and I believe you remember when Jeffrey Hodgson visited Alcott, which is the headquarters, and he's basically known as a clairvoyant, as a mystic, but he was very, very interested in compassion and nonviolence, and he was one of the earliest promoters of vegetarianism. And he started writing about ahimsa in the 1940s, which I didn't know about until recently. But I remember that I met him at Alcott, as you did, and later I spent time with him at the Crotona Institute of Theosophy in California. And I was able to have some private meetings with him. And many people in the Theosophical Society study esoteric religion and the history of the human race that goes back millions of years. And I was never really into that. I kind of like the idea of the unity of life and what we can do to make the world better now. And I kind of told him that I just don't understand a lot of what people are talking about. And he said, Nathaniel, you need to understand that ahimsa is the essence of theosophy, the essence of divine wisdom, and the importance of doing our best every day to promote peace and compassion. And I was very moved by that, and I've always remembered his teaching.
This is really fascinating to me. Reverend William and I were talking this morning about the far-sightedness of even the very early theosophists back in the 1800s to think about the oneness of all people and all life that long ago was quite extraordinary. And I know that some of the early theosophists had difficulties that were not unlike the kinds of problems that people are running into again today. I think of one of the founders, Annie Besant, who lost her children in a divorce. And there were problems. People had a hard time in the 1870s and in the 2020s accepting people seeing life a little bit differently. So can you tell us a little bit about some of those pioneers in the history?
I'm not an expert in theosophical history, but one of the leaders, the early founders, was Madame Helena Blavatsky. And she was a very independent woman. She's actually the first Russian citizen to become an American citizen. And she had traveled by herself into the Himalayas. And the story is that she met highly evolved people who were known as the masters of the wisdom. And they chose her to organize an organization or start an organization that promoted universal kinship of humanity and the study of the deeper sides of all the religions in the world, because the idea is that all of the religions share on a deeper level a certain commonality. So this organization was one of the first ever to accept and promote the unity of people from all different religions in the world, as well as races, because of course, discrimination has been going on and racism has been going on for millennia. But this is the first organization, for example, to accept low caste Hindus as members and see everyone as equal and equally due respect and to be listened to and to become friends with. And Madame Blavatsky was one of the first people to do this, and other people she was involved with, for example, a man named Henry Steele Olcott, who was a Civil War colonel. And he later wound up bringing Buddhism right back to Sri Lanka, which is used to be Ceylon. And there's statues of him having promoted Buddhism and brought it back to a mainstream life there. So it was an interesting group. And if you go to the headquarters in Adyar in Madras, India, they have shrines and temples of many of the major world religions. And the Dalai Lama actually visited Adyar back in 1956. And he mentioned that this was the first time he was exposed to people with a pluralism, I think it's called pluralism of belief and study in different religions. And he was, of course, only exposed to Tibetan Buddhism. And he said, this is the first time I was really in contact with people who are Christians and Jews and Buddhists and Muslims and Hindus. And he said it changed his whole perspective of life. And what interested me, which I found out recently, do you remember Edwin Lord, who was the—
Oh, yes.
Yeah, Edward and Marcella Lord.
Yeah.
He became very close to the Dalai Lama in the 50s when the Dalai Lama was like a young man. And he was the one who was instrumental in bringing him to the Theosophical headquarters in Adyar. And we used to eat dinner with Edwin and his wife, but he was very modest and he never really talked about his background. And he really changed, his connection with the Dalai Lama really changed the Dalai Lama's perspective on the world, which in turn has changed the way that Tibetan Buddhism is understood in the world.
Wow, I love the connections. And when the Dalai Lama came to Alcott, when we were working there, along with a lot of other incredible people. So I love it that ahimsa is now seen as the essence of theosophy. And I really believe that you have a lot to do with that, because I have seen you as a champion of ahimsa from the first time I ever met you. I remember when you were researching that first book on vegetarianism, you went to a slaughterhouse. Now,
That's
we
right.
all
That's
know
what—
about undercover investigators and that nowadays, but this was the early 1970s. So what drew ahimsa into your consciousness and your awareness?
It's hard to say. I think that in my life, and I have to admit this, I've had a lot of violent, non-ahimsa tendencies. And these were things that maybe if we talk about reincarnation in a past life, I may well have been a person who expressed a great deal of cruelty. And I think in this life, I've been striving for a life of ahimsa and promoting it. I remember as a kid, I used to be terrified if I ever saw anyone who was missing a limb. For example, an amputee, I used to be absolutely, I would react to such a strong point, I would have to leave. And many years ago, I've always met a lot of people who are psychic, and one of them did talk to me about a past life and said, in the last life, you were a samurai in Japan. I've always felt a very strong connection to Japan. He said, you were involved in a great deal of cruelty, and you were involved in killing quite a few people. And he said, this is why in this life, you've been very interested in nonviolence and peace and compassion. And that really fit. That made sense to me. And I still am aware of it. I know that, one of the challenges that I think a lot of us are dealing with these days is with COVID. A lot of people have been traumatized and a lot of people have been behaving in ways that we normally would not. I think there's a lot more anger, a lot more frustration, a lot more selfishness. And it's been really a challenge to try to meet that in our everyday life, to try to express compassion and understanding towards other people and also towards ourselves. And these days, I think for me, the last couple of years have been that kind of a challenge.
So, Nathaniel, one of my favorites of your books, and I have a lot of favorites. You guys, if you don't know Nathaniel's work, you must look him up because he is truly a Renaissance author, and he has studied so many areas. He's got the ahimsa and nonviolence, all kinds of holistic health topics, palmistry, and some other kinds of psychic issues. It's just, there's a wealth of wonderful information in his books. But one of your very favorites of mine is The Nonviolent Revolution. And as I look at the world around us now, and I realize everything is changing, nothing stays the same, but just looking at what we see in the present moment, where would a nonviolent revolution fit in, and is one possible?
This is a very good question. I think we have no choice. If we give into the violence in the world and the lying, the constant manipulation, the lying, the commercialism, this promotion of the consumer society, I think this all leads to destruction. We're very much aware, and I know that some of the people here have studied the impact on consumerism and working, dealing with other animals and how they don't survive, the fact that this is destroying the environment. We have to do what we can in our own ways to promote a nonviolent type of living and a real understanding of other lives. One of my favorite books is actually one I wrote called Sacred Trees. And I spent months traveling around the world and visiting ancient forests. And I feel that we could communicate with trees similarly as we communicate with other animals. And by really trying to understand them, we will learn from them. And I did this with trees, and I learned a great deal about how we need to really expand our compassion to flowers and trees and animals and bees and certainly individual other people. And I think that's really probably the beginning, is the other people, but not limit ourselves in any way. And of course, each of us is going to have our own focus, things that we feel more inclined to be involved with. Some people work very well with gardens. And I think you remember there were several people at the Theosophical headquarters who were master gardeners. I'm thinking of our friend Charlie Sass, who used to take care of the plants. And he did it in a very quiet way, but that was his way of expressing love and compassion towards life. And other people were involved in other types of activities. And one of the old Theosophical, not a dogma, but one of the statements is together differently, to work together differently in our own way to work toward the same goal, and understanding that everyone is not going to do the same thing. There were some people, for example, at Alcott, at the headquarters, who are not vegetarian by nature. And I'm thinking a woman who was involved in cleaning she was the head housekeeper, Robertina, and she was a meat eater. Yet she was one of the most spiritual, the most generous people I ever met. And you remember Maddie and Bob Gephardt, when their apartment was in a fire and they lost everything, absolutely everything. And many people were saying, well, if we could do anything, we'll be happy to help. Please call on us. And what she did is she went right up to Maddie Louise, gave her $300 in cash, turned around and left, because she knew exactly what was needed. And I remember once when I was in California, I was really broke at the time. And she used to make fun of our diets because we would have a lot of meat that was like gluten and soy. She referred to it as rubber heels. And I remember that when I was out in Ojai, I once got a letter from her and I had like $30 in the bank or something like that. I was really broke. And she enclosed a $50 bill and said, buy yourself some rubber heels. And it's such an act of pure generosity. And that too has a very strong spiritual root. The idea of doing what's appropriate to help other people, and of course, animals and plants, and of course, the environment in general. So I kind of like that holistic view, and also the idea of understanding that people are going to be working differently, and everyone should be supported towards that.
I love that. I never heard that, together differently. Of all the times when we could use that teaching, I think right about now.
And that was George Arundel came up with that, who was Rukmini Devi's husband.
Yes. Wow.
He was a big promoter of vegetarianism. I remember she was very active in the vegetarian societies, the International Vegetarian Societies, and the Indian vegetarian movement as well.
Yes. For people who don't know, Rukmini was a very famous Indian dancer. And she tells the story of when she was in the States, that everybody wanted to regale her with all this food and all these big meals with many courses. And she was so eager to get back to India and her simple diet. And she was lacto-vegetarian, not vegan. And she tells the story that she was invited at the very end of her trip for an impromptu luncheon by Eleanor Roosevelt. And she was just thinking, oh no, another one of these big, awful, heavy lunches. Okay, you can't say no to the first lady. They had cottage cheese and fruit. And she always talked about that as such a wonderful memory of being in the United States. So just as our time comes to a close, this is always seems so fast to me. Many people in our generation have tried lots of spiritual paths, and you have stuck with this one. So I just want to know, as the final kind of statement, how has Theosophy grown with you, and how have you grown with it? And just what does your life look like, a day in the life of a Theosophist?
Well, I can't say that I represent any typical Theosophist, because one of the things, as you well know, and you've met many when you were at the headquarters and during convention, the people in the Theosophical Society are vastly different, of all professions, all different kinds of beliefs. I think my life is very similar to what yours would be, or many other people. You know, we wake up in the morning and say, well, what can I do to make the world a better place? And what I try to do is in the morning, just to focus on, I know that when I go out of the house and when I interact with other people, especially these days, I think the most important thing is to be friendly, be sensitive, be open, and make people feel a little bit better. Because I think a lot of people are traumatized, people are unhappy. And it's also important for me also to take time to relax, time to reflect. I try to get out in nature every single day. Like after this lovely meeting, I'm planning to take a walk in Valley Stream State Park in Long Island, which is a very beautiful park. They've got wonderful ducks, and the new ducklings have just been born. And it's a very beautiful place to just walk. And I really suggest and recommend that everybody's day should include time in nature, and especially interacting with the trees and the plants and the flowers, because I do believe that all life is sentient, and that we can communicate and learn from other forms of life. And they also learn from us. I found that when I was doing my work with the trees in Latin America and in California, they often like to learn from us because we're mobile and move around, whereas they stay in one place. So there's a certain affinity between humans and trees, humans and flowers, humans and other plants. And I think that's very important to focus on.
Well, that's so beautiful. And how wonderful today that we're talking with farmers. So thank you so much, Nathaniel.
Thank you,
we'll pass
Victoria.
it on to Reverend Erica, Kimmy, and Carano.
Thank you.
All right, I agree. This is a perfect transition over. And thank you both so much for that conversation and that inspiration. So before we introduce our guests who we alluded to at the beginning, this is the moment in the service. We've been here for about an hour. This is where we check in with our bodies. We do a little bit of stretching. If you feel like doing some stretching, I don't know if any of you are energetically sensitive, but those of you might want to do a little shaking if you're picking up on a lot of energy in the world right now. Shake that out. And just anything that feels good, maybe giving your shoulders a little roll up and back. Sometimes we call in our favorite animal friends here and become inspired by their movements. I always like to go for the falcons and the big arm stretches. That feels really good on my back and across my chest. So just whatever feels good, do it. Check in with your body. Do you need to reposition yourself or move around at all? All right. Awesome. I love seeing that too. Those of you who have your video on, I love seeing everyone moving and shaking and stretching. It's my favorite thing. All right. So I'm very, very excited to introduce you now officially to Carano and Kimmy. So Carano Hobbolt and Kimmy Hedris they run Sweet Digs Farm, which is, as I said before, a 2.5-acre veganic farm right outside of Vancouver. And that is the unceded territory of the Musqueam and the Coast Salish people. They have a passion for food justice, earth activism, and a spiritual vegan ethos that guide their farming practices, and also how they relate to their community and the ecology where they live. And they are also graduates of the Main Street Vegan Academy. Now, earlier, we got to zoom into their farm and hang out with the bees, but we have a few more photos that we wanted to show you real quick, just to really get a sense of what's going on in their farm, and kind of just to get a little bit more of a sense of what they've got going on here. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to you two if you'd like to do a little narrating as we flip through some of these photos. Go for it.
Oh gosh. Okay. Well, there we are. Right. Zoomed right in.
That's one of our fields.
There's a rainbow there. It's faded. You can't quite see it, but that's just to show you the hedge row, the trees that are sort of bordering our farm. So we're like quite a vibrant little ecosystem surrounded by a lot of quite barren farmland.
Yeah.
And it's a very small scale model. So this is our system of creating beds and pathways.
Lots of composting. Plant-based compost is a big part of our practice. There is someone driving that small tractor. That probably me.
So we often leave kale to the next season to go to flower, so that there are lots of, and that's where we thought we would get nice pollinator shots, but the weather just wasn't cooperating. The bees were not out when I wanted to take a video, and that's this year planting our brassica patch. That's looking from the back of the farm.
We lease 2 pieces of land behind 2 big houses in a really urban environment. And so it looks like we're right in the middle of Richmond, but when by these pictures, you can't really tell. The white is insect netting. Oh, Kimmy wanted to put that in, but you can keep going, Erica. It's too bad when your girlfriend likes the shot that you don't.
It's a huge cauliflower.
It is
a great shot. That's carrots and beets growing in our little barn HQ we have.
We don't live on the farm. We rent farmland, and we get a year by the year lease. And we run a CSA box program.
This is one of our volunteers helping us mulch our garlic fields. And oh, the photo didn't get in. There's huge snow geese that always fly over top of our garlic planting at that time of year. That's our beloved River, who 2 days ago was her 2 years of not being with us anymore. So we love her very much. She loved sitting in the garlic. That's the garlic growing, and milky oat growing in amongst the garlic. A little bit of our harvest.
Love that one.
Hanging garlic, that's me hanging the garlic in our packing shed. And we grow medicinal herbs as well. We're just getting into that. So we have a little medicinal herb area that we dry and process to medicine. Very small at this point, but we'd like to expand that more. That is cilantro becoming coriander, and the bees
love it.
Loading pollen on their legs.
We try to have things in flower all the time, and that's sort of one of the goals of veganic practice, is to have a lot in flower all the time. And cilantro is an easy one, because if anyone's ever grown it, it wants to go to flower.
Can we use that as a transition? Actually, if we pause the slideshow, Phil, I would love to go right into that question of veganic farming, because that's a term that I don't know if everyone's familiar with, but this was one of the questions I wanted to ask you in our compassion in action segment is, what exactly is veganic farming?
Well, so one way, there's many definitions, and they all focus around the fact that we are in relationship with nature and that we respect all of the beings in the ecosystem. And I really like one definition that is Megan, forget her last name, of Learn Veganic. You can look that up online. Is that it's a system of farming that is not completely free of animals, but where animals are completely free. And so we don't have domesticated animals. We don't domesticate animals. We don't have animals on the farm that are working for us. We not only do we farm amongst them, but we also take steps to protect and create habitat for them. So that's sort of one version of a definition of veganic farming.
And then in terms of the things we use, like plant-based compost, plant-based amendments. So everything we use and bring into the farm from outside of the circle is vegan, free of industrial animal agriculture.
Beautiful.
And a lot of the practices are not unique to veganic, like using floating row cover to protect the crops from insect damage, but we use that exclusively. We don't use any kind of pesticides, which even in organic farming are broad-based. So they will, you'll hurt the ladybugs as well as the aphids.
Yeah, everything is kind of broad spectrum. And so we kind of joined an ecosystem that was already there, and we joined a food system that was already there. And so when we look at farmland, we think of, oh, human food. And this is their farmland. They're all eating and doing their thing. So we join it and we try to grow food for humans within an ecosystem that is shared with the residents that were already there.
And they nibble at the
They
food we're
do,
growing
they
as
do.
well.
But we don't call them pests. We just plant a lot. And then they take 10%, like, yeah.
You're tithing to the insects.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah. Couple slug kisses here and there. We tell our members, like, if you end up with a slug in your box, like, I can guarantee you they don't want to be there, just like you don't want to see them. So just like release them. Yeah.
Beautiful. Talk about interbeing. There we go. We brought it full circle.
Yeah.
So the second question I'd love to ask you is to bring this into the spiritual now, because, obviously you even mentioned in your bio, this is also a spiritual ethos for you. So can you make the connection between who you are as farmers with your spirituality?
I think Kimmy and I have always sort of been on a spiritual quest, and we used to do a lot of meditation and a lot of, sitting on the mat or yoga, and we started to not have time for that because we were farming. And what we realized was it's almost like the yoga of farming, or the pharma, like we sort of extended that practice into how we farm. And so it's a practice of non-harm. It's a practice of presence, of being there. And so I think we try our hardest. Obviously, farming is quite stressful, but we've tried to create it as a sanctuary for humans and the beings we share it with. And so I think because we don't have time for the off the mat stuff, we have to do the farm stuff. It kind of became our practice was the farm.
And for a lot of people who decide to be vegan, the motivation for a lot of people is to eat peacefully. And that was sort of a transformative moment for me when Karen said, I want to be vegan. I want to eat peacefully. And she said, I want to eat peaceful. And I just have to change it to the correct grammar. I can't, I'm so type A. But
I thought it was better the other way.
So it works better the other way. But so if we eat peacefully, then as through our journey as farmers, we just thought, well, we have to farm peacefully. And there are so many ways in which farming is so not peaceful. And I liked Nathaniel talking about a nonviolent revolution. I'm really going to read that book because we need a nonviolent revolution in our food system globally. There's just so much destruction, and it's really possible to transform it and to farm in a different way and to feed the global population in a different way without cutting down the rainforests in order to grow feed for animals. So it's like once you dig into the impacts of the animal agriculture industry and that global food system, you realize how much we need to just shift to plants. I mean, everyone here knows that, but it is very spiritual and it's very political as well. So we've kind of tried to combine those things.
If people wanted to learn more about you and what you're doing, how could they find you?
Gosh, we don't say much about
They
we don't say
can't.
much about veganic farming on our website, but you can learn more about veganic farming by Googling it, learn veganic.
For us,
Yeah.
because we decided sort of quite consciously to not spend a ton of time on the computer and not have a smartphone, and to be, that was part of our sort of techno presence, lack of presence on the farm, was being away through the techie world. So we've really kind of stayed free of that. So you can go to our WordPress, super DIY, and then also that's kind of it. We focus on really local. We're really small, we're really local. And so, but you can check us out on our WordPress. But there's the veganic network, and it's a growing movement. There's lots of really cool new farmers and organizations.
There's a farm
promoting
called
this.
Show Farm, and
SHO.
Seed the Commons is an organization working on veganic farming, and Jiva Bhavana is out of India. So those are just a few resources. And we are going to start a veganic farming apprenticeship next year.
Next year we're doing. Yeah.
It's in the works. We'll start small.
Okay,
Everything we do is very small.
we can come visit you and apprentice.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. So just the WordPress site, what would the URL be of that? Do you know?
Sweetdigsfarm.ca, and that's Sweet Digs with a Z for you all Americans, with a Z for us Canadians. Sweetdigsfarm.ca.
Excellent. We'll put that in the chat too. All right.
Thank you so much for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
And those for the rest of the photos we didn't get a chance to see, check out the Instagram channel. We'll make sure those are posted so you can flip through the rest of them. Thank you both so much for sharing all of your compassion and the way that you put that into action in the world, and for being such an inspiration.
Thanks, Erica.
Thank you.
Over to Rev Sarah for some closing blessings and prayers.
All right. Thank you so much, Erica. Thank you, Kareno and Kimmy. And I'm hungry again. You all end up always getting me hungry at the end of these services. So we're going to end today in theme with a rainbow loving kindness prayer for animals of all colors. I'm going to ask you just to take a deep breath with me, to feel your energy within your body, to know that we have the capacity to affect the spaces around us, and the possibility of spreading our compassion far, far out from our bodies. And we start by radiating compassion to all the beings who are purple in color, including the violet-backed starling, the orchid dotty-back, and the purple firefish. And next, we envision our compassion is blue. And we radiate compassion to all beings who are blue in color, including the blue jay, the little blue heron, the eastern indigo snake, and even the blue poison dark frog. Next, we radiate compassion to all beings who are green in color, including the European green lizard, the green-headed tanager, and the great green bush cricket. Taking another breath, noticing perhaps the color washing from us, radiating out, now changing to yellow. We radiate compassion to all beings who are yellowish in color, including the yellow jacket, the banana slug, the Asian golden weaver, and the apple snail. Breathing in, we transition that yellow to deep, deep orange. We radiate compassion to beings who are orange in color, including the orangutan, European spider crab, and the monarch butterfly. And now perhaps we take anything around us that is red in anger, and red in frustration, and red in hate, and red in frustration and fire, and we transform that red into the red of love. We radiate compassion and love to all beings who are red in color, including the scarlet ibis, the tomato frog, and the bouncy, bouncy red kangaroo. Now, if you can touch all of those colors inside of you and extending out of you, purple, blue, green, yellow, orange, red, all the shades it makes when they combine, the black of all colors together, the white in the absence of color, the browns, those colors that we used to be scolded for when painting in kindergarten, for making mud out of mixing all of our colors. We see that mud as the beautiful fertile earth and soil. And from this place of all colors, please radiate compassion to all beings known by anyone in this community as we bring them to our minds. I radiate compassion to my friend Linnell, who we placed into the ground today, her ashes, and to her husband who is grieving. Please say aloud, wherever you are, anyone else you would like to radiate compassion to, human, other than human, river, soil, air, mountain, sand, cloud, wherever those beings are. And finally, for all of those I have not named, of all colors and textures and sexes and genders and geographic locations and sizes, we radiate compassion that they may be free from suffering and experience boundless joy. And Phil, if you could bring up our final slide. Our closing prayer that we say together. May all creatures everywhere be happy and free. May the thoughts, words, and actions of our life contribute to this happiness and this freedom for all. May it be so. Amen, amen, amen. So mote it be, and so it is. And whatever closing word you would like, folks. Thank you for sharing blessings and joys and prayers with me. I'm going to throw two things in our chat today, as I always do, a little extra. Please consider this month supporting LGBTQIA+ human animals this month by volunteering or donating or learning about the work that any of these organizations do. And also, I'm going to pop in a petition this month to urge Etsy to remove cruel animal fur from its global marketplace. About time we get rid of that. So if you all would take those into your advocacy this week or consider doing so, I would appreciate it. William, over to you.
Now is the time when I will get you all excited about our upcoming events. Our next Sunday service is July 24th, and our spiritual guest will be Dr. Tushar Mehta, a Jain who practices emergency medicine in Toronto. And I just want to say that I find all religions fascinating, but I particularly find the Jain religion to be so fascinating. And so I'm looking forward to this next service. So Dr. Mehta has given lectures and seminars for the Jain community. He is co-founder of the towardahimsa.com, and he's volunteered with Jain and secular youth camps, promoting ahimsa philosophy in modernity and emphasizing the interconnectedness of humans, animals, and all life. So I think that his website, Toward Ahimsa, is in chat now. So, and next month, our Compassion in Action guest will be Kathy Stevens, who is a founder of the Catskills Sanctuary in New York. And she's just put together a fascinating, compassionate organization there in the Catskills. So I'll also mention that if you enjoyed the service and want to support our programming, you actually can donate on our website at the link posted in the chat box. And donations may be made both via PayPal and most credit cards and debit cards. And for our engaged members, because we do have a membership program, we will have our monthly July Engaged Practice Circle on July 18th, and it will be led by Reverend Erica and focus on centering prayer. So all the details about our membership are available at compassionconsortium.org/membership. But this is purely optional. You're always welcome at all of our services and events, whether or not you become a formal member. We're just letting you know that that's there. And so something that we are all excited about is that we are launching the Compassion Consortium Animal Chaplaincy Training and Ordination Program this fall. And to me, this is just really, really a big deal because we need to put more animal chaplains out there in the world. So you can just go to our website and check out, the training tab on our website. And then lastly, we just want to point out that we do have an event coming up called the Road to Eden. We are co-hosting this with the Spiritual Forum at Unity Village near Kansas City. And this would be a great opportunity for us to all meet each other. So if you'd like to go to Kansas City in October and celebrate Halloween with us, please feel free to join us and bring your religious spiritual costumes.